This is Sylvia. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Mira. So welcome to another Mira webinar. And we saw there are many audience already here. So if you can type in your chat, let us know where you come from and what your goals are. I guess many people are trying to conceive, we're trying to understand deeper about PCOS condition. So that's exactly what we want to address today. But really, really happy to see you again. So please let us know in the chat. Feel free to chat. It's a pretty casual conversation today. Gonna be a panel. We don't have too many slides. So, let us know where you come from. Okay, so really nice to meet everyone here. So let me get this slide onto the screen. Oops, sorry. I don't know why I went to the end. Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about the PCOS myths and what needs to be debunked. We know PCOS is something pretty difficult to manage, and also it's a long-term, lasted for a while. So today I'm so happy we have Miss Anna. So Anna is a PCOS coach, and she's based in UK. And we also have Danielle from from the US, and she's the naturopathic doctor. So I will let Danielle to introduce yourself to our audience first.
Great, thank you. So I'm a naturopathic doctor, and for anyone who is unfamiliar with what that is, essentially I am trained in conventional medicine like pharmaceuticals, but I am also trained in nutrition and supplements and lifestyle medicine. So I kind of use the best of both worlds, but lean more towards the natural side of things when supporting my patients. And it also has allowed me to help get a lot of my patients off of pharmaceuticals with a more holistic, whole body approach, which is always good because, of course, side effects come along with those pharmaceuticals. So I am located in Atlanta, Georgia in the States, but I do work with all my patients virtually. I have patients from across the world, and I specialize in PCOS. So I know it can be hard to access a PCOS specialist. Unfortunately, telemedicine is so common now. And so I've just found, to be able to connect with women across the world and share this medicine is really powerful because it can make such a huge difference with PCOS, which we'll talk about.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Daniel, for your introduction. And I'm going to pass it to Miss Anna. So maybe, Anna, you can introduce yourself too.
Hi, so I'm Anna Garcia. I'm based over in England in the UK. I'm a physiology graduate, meaning I did a physiology undergrad, which gave me a really good backbone in medicine and pharmaceuticals, as well as neuroscience. I then decided to go and study to be a health coach when I started to actually work with myself on how to kind of actually help myself with PCOS. I am a fellow sister. I have lost over 30 pounds with PCOS completely naturally. And I have one healthy child, and I'm currently pregnant as well, completely naturally again. So I help women achieve the same. I help them lose weight. I help them feel great and ovulate with PCOS, completely naturally, focusing on diet and lifestyle changes with my 6-step protocol that I have devised using up-to-date research that I have spent time with a mentor going over. So yeah, I see people from the UK mainly, but also from Europe and even in India, as well as some US clients I have. So I'm very blessed to help women all over the world.
Sounds great. Thank you, Miss Anna. I think that's a really exciting story, what you have been achieved while managing your PCOS condition. So we are really excited to hearing from both of you guys from about some very commonly asked question about PCOS today. So before we go forward, I just like to go through the common disclaimer. We go that all the time. So basically anything we're talking about here is trying to give you some educational and informational purpose. So it's not really to replace any medical advice. And if you have question about your own health, you should still go to see your doctor. And also, for any questions, and please feel free to type that in the chat. And we do have moderators, on the chat. So those will be marked as question. And we have a Q&A session at the end of our presentation and our panel discussion. So last thing to do before we start is we like to do a poll. So you're going to see 3 questions on your screen right now. So please help us to answer that. That will really help us to understand your goal and what audience we're talking to, so our discussion can be more tailored towards your need. Okay, so in our audience today, 84% have PCOS. So you're at the right place. So today, that's what we're going to talk about today. And 16% are not sure if they have PCOS or not. And also about 65% are trying to get pregnant. And 17% want to get pregnant in few years. Okay, really good to know. And then about 30% is using Mira to track the fertility hormone, 20% is using other product to track, and there's about 42% is not really tracking. Okay, thank you so much for that information. Now we're gonna go into our discussion. Okay, so so this is going to be a panel discussion, and here are some questions we have collected for our audience before the webinar. So the first question is about you can't get pregnant if you have PCOS. We don't know if that's really true, and we don't know, is that, how should we think about that? So maybe for this one, Anna, you want to go first?
Yes, wonderful. Well, I'm currently 18 weeks pregnant, so I'm already debunking the myth naturally that you can't get pregnant with PCOS. Like many women who was diagnosed quite young with PCOS at 17, I was told by my doctor that I would probably never conceive, and if I did want to conceive, I'd have to go through IVF or to receive fertility injections in order to make my body ovulate. Now, miraculously, I actually conceived my first child while taking the pill and not having any periods. So I like to say that the stars aligned and my Eli just wanted to be born. With this pregnancy was very much planned. I had spent 6 months kind of making sure that my periods were regular in preparation for getting pregnant. So, and I got pregnant first time of trying, which I'm very, very pleased with. So yes, you can definitely get pregnant if you have PCOS, but you want to be making sure that you're actively putting in the work. I would say 6 months to a year beforehand. You want to make sure you're having regular ovulatory periods, that your endometrium is nice and thick so that it can support a healthy egg sac whilst you are carrying your child through your pregnancy. So yes, you can very, very much get pregnant with PCOS if you have the right treatments, the right coaching, the right diet and lifestyle to support you.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. Especially like that 6 to 12 month preparation period. I think a lot of times we think, oh, we're just going to get off the birth control pill and immediately start trying and it's going to work for us. And I think especially if you were put on the pill as a teenager for PCOS, which is so common, definitely getting off of it at least a year before to really give your body time to kind of re-regulate and see what your cycles are at baseline. And then 2 other things I think of when it comes to getting pregnant with PCOS is it's really important that your doctor is looking at thyroid health, because we know that women with PCOS have a higher risk of having poor thyroid function than women without PCOS, and that's going to play a major role in your ability to get pregnant. And then also looking at nutrient deficiencies, which I often see with PCOS. So things like vitamin D, vitamin B12, iron. A lot of these things aren't always at the very forefront of our minds when we're thinking about pregnancy because we're so focused on hormones, but the thyroid and the nutrition piece has to be on board as well.
Very great, very great. Thank you so much for that insight. So I think this is a very common myth in a lot of audience and even like mirror users. And the people think it's so difficult to get pregnant if they have PCOS. So for me, I think one additional question, like, is there any different kinds of PCOS, or because some people maybe they have their cycle irregularity is pretty huge, and it's really challenging for them, but some of them is really being, it's kind of manageable. It's easier to get conceived. So do you guys really say that, just to be more practical guide to our audience, do you say there's certain type of PCOS might be more difficult to get pregnant, or there's something, they can do about that?
Yeah, so I mean, with PCOS, because it is a syndrome, it's a collection of symptoms, and someone with PCOS will have regular periods, but they might have all the other symptoms like weight gain, acne, hair loss. somebody else might have really irregular periods, but not really have many other PCOS symptoms. So it really can present differently in different bodies. And then, yeah, there are different types with, insulin resistance or blood sugar imbalance being the most common. But I would say, looking at kind of like what is the driving factors behind your PCOS? How long have you been struggling with it? If you've been struggling with unmanaged PCOS for 10 years, it may take you a little bit longer to get it under control versus somebody who's been struggling for like 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely. And I would say that it's really important to kind of highlight what your underlying cause is, what that driver of PCOS is. For some people, it could be as simple as the products that you're using in your home causing endocrine disruptions. And just by eliminating that, you could see a massive improvement in your symptoms. For others, like insulin-resistant PCOS, you're going to have to make significant changes to your diet in order to kind of get that under control so you can ovulate again. PCOS is very much like an umbrella term for a whole lot of different causes and things that can be going on under the surface. What we see on the surface is the irregular periods and the hormone fluctuations. So when you dig a little deeper, you'll be able to kind of remedy the situation a lot quicker. So if you can do that with the help of a doctor and with the help of clinical testing, you'll get that much quicker than if you were doing it just by guessing. So I would always say, when looking for your underlying cause and identifying your type, I would say work with someone who's professional so that you can do this accurately, so to get you pregnant quicker.
Thank you so much. So does that mean, because I saw a lot of questions in the chat right now about the cause of PCOS. So does that mean if they want to understand what is the cause of their PCOS, they should go to see a doctor? Maybe there's some medical exam they should perform to understand is that insulin resistant or not? Is that right?
Well, in terms of like medical exams, you probably won't need anything kind of like done as in like checking down there in terms of if the plumbing's working correctly, should we say. But blood tests are really, really useful, as well as ultrasounds, and also going by a patient's medical history and just seeing what if there's anything kind of like popping up in there, as well as their diet, their lifestyle, how their stress levels are, etc. It can be a bit of a guessing game, and I will say that it's not just PCOS isn't caused by just one driver. Usually it's a handful of them, so it's about identifying that in that person to kind of help them the most. And that's why having an objective like view can be so useful. Now, oftentimes typical medical doctors don't have the time to go through your medical history in the same way. So it can be useful working with a coach, a naturopathic doctor, a nutritionist who specializes in PCOS to kind of sit down with you for that hour, an hour and a half, to really go through everything to help you identify how best to help you and your causes for PCOS.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's go to the second common myth. So that was that you can ignore your PCOS if you don't want kids. So Danielle, do you agree with that?
Definitely not. I think that, and I've heard this before, well, I don't have to worry about PCOS because I don't want to get pregnant, but PCOS is so much more than just a fertility issue. Unmanaged PCOS can increase your risk of high cholesterol, of developing diabetes, high blood pressure, even anxiety, depression, disordered eating, if unmanaged. So it's not just about getting pregnant. And, when I am working with my patients on getting pregnant with PCOS, I emphasize that with them as well. I tell them, like, yes, the immediate goal is to get pregnant, but I really want you to learn how to, live in a way that's going to allow you to manage your PCOS long term and build these sustainable habits, because I want you to feel good through pregnancy, through postpartum, and, years down the line. And I also think, just feeling good in your body and feeling confident in your body and having good energy and having, no brain fog and being able to sleep well, all these things are so important. And women with PCOS deserve to feel that way. And that's not just a fertility thing. So I think it's so important to get your PCOS under control, both so you can feel good in your body now, but also so you have a healthy life in the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to come at this question from the perspective of someone who has PCOS. I describe what it's like to have managed PCOS versus unmanaged PCOS like night and day. The way that managing my PCOS has transformed my life, I honestly get choked up thinking about it, because the person that I was when I had unmanaged PCOS, the person who couldn't sleep, who was depressed, who didn't have the energy to chase her 1-year-old toddler around a park, who honestly couldn't see themselves living very much longer in this world. I'm so grateful that I was able to take my knowledge from my degree and actually apply it to current research and find something that works for me. It's why I feel so passionate about telling women to manage their PCOS long before they want to have kids, or if they don't want to have kids, that's completely their choice. But you could be missing out on like a version of you that is the most true and the most aligned to your like inner self that you could ever imagine. I feel like I've gone back to a girl that I was when I was maybe 14 and just reconnected with myself and like my soul. It's extremely emotional and spiritual, and I really encourage people to kind of like try and get back to that girl or that woman as quick as you can, because it is absolutely wonderful being here with regular periods and the ability to get pregnant when I want to, and not being dictated by like fertility treatments at such a young age. For me, I'm currently 25, so I have a little bit of leeway in that department. So yeah, I really encourage people to manage their PCOS, because it's the difference in living a kind of okay life to living a great life and seeing life in color.
That's great suggestion. Thank you so much for that story. I saw a lot of questions in the chat asking about PCOS specialists and also asking about nutritionist specialists. So maybe you guys can give some suggestions. Maybe Anna wants to go first this time.
Yeah, okay. Well, there are, in terms of kind of like medical specialists, PCOS is an interesting condition because it's technically gynecological, meaning that it falls under an OBGYN. However, some is also endocrine, meaning hormonal. So it can sometimes be seen medically by an endocrinologist, someone who studies your hormones. Also, a lot of the symptoms overlap between reproductive and metabolic, because we have a lot of insulin resistance and such that and thyroid as well, they all intertwine. So that's kind of like the medical perspective. You also have your primary healthcare provider or your GP in the UK. They can be very good at like overseeing the overall stuff. In terms of like nutrition, unless a doctor is trained in nutrition, I would always urge on getting a designated PCOS specialist nutritionist, or someone who has a lot of experience with diabetes. They tend to be like very similar. I would say PCOS tends to form a little bit more of like dependence on really good quality fats and like nuts and seeds, and to make sure that we're meeting all of our nutrient deficiencies, which can sometimes be left by traditional dietitians that just focus on calories. So we really want to be focusing on the quality of that food. And then there's people like me who are health coaches who can advise on a very wide range of things and get people ready to take their next steps, and can work alongside higher professionals to deliver their plan in a very like coached and hand-holding way, so that people actually complete it. Because it's one thing giving all of the information, it's another thing doing it. So having that knowledge can be useful.
Thank you so much, Anna. So, similar question for Danielle. So I saw people are asking about how to regulate period. Maybe you can give a little bit suggestion about that.
I mean, it kind of goes back to what Anna said about kind of finding the root cause of your PCOS. So for about 70% of women with PCOS, that's going to be insulin resistance and blood sugar related. So that is going to mean, you know, learning how to eat in a way that's going to balance your blood sugar, exercising in a way that's going to help to improve blood sugar response after meals. Maybe that means taking certain supplements, which I'm not going to dive into right now because it's so specific for each person. I think that, you know, just taking any random supplement you hear about online can be really damaging. And that's why it's so important to work with a specialist who can really look at your symptoms, look at your lab results, and determine what exactly you need. So that's going to be one way. If your irregular periods are related to blood sugar imbalance, then your focus is going to be blood sugar balance. Now, for others, it can be related to inflammation. It can be related to adrenal dysfunction. So stress is a huge driver of irregular cycles. So I can't really say like there's one specific thing that you should be doing because it's so individual. And that's what makes PCOS difficult to treat yourself, because when you read about it online, you know, what worked for person A and B may not be the right thing for you, because PCOS presents differently in people and the cause is so different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. So since we're talking about irregular period, so that goes to our myth number 3, which is irregular periods means you have PCOS. Maybe Daniel, you can comment on this first.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, women with PCOS, they may have irregular periods, but they may have regular periods, and it doesn't necessarily determine if you for sure have PCOS or not. With irregular periods, although that is a really common sign of PCOS because women with PCOS often aren't ovulating, there are other causes too, one of them being low thyroid function. And it's really important if you have PCOS that you're testing your thyroid as well, because the two look so similar, PCOS and low thyroid function, and they often occur together. So if you have PCOS and you're focusing on treating PCOS, but then you have low thyroid function and you are not addressing that as well, then you're only going to see so much improvement. So if you feel like, oh man, I'm doing everything right for my PCOS, but my cycles are still irregular, definitely check your thyroid. So if your thyroid is low, it's going to contribute to irregular periods. And then I would say the second most common thing I see related to irregular periods after PCOS and thyroid dysfunction is women who are under eating and over exercising in attempt to lose weight. And I often see this with PCOS, and it usually backfires. They end up actually gaining more weight because their metabolism is slowing and they're stressing their body. But in general, if we're under eating and over exercising, our reproductive system is going to get shut down. It's kind of like our body's protective mechanism saying, we don't even have enough nutrients for our body. We cannot get pregnant right now because we don't have nutrients for another baby. So if you have irregular periods, don't just assume you have PCOS. Get worked up for it. Get evaluated for thyroid function, and then considering, are you eating enough for your daily needs and your activity level?
Absolutely. And in addition to kind of like low thyroid and as well as like not eating enough calories causing irregular periods, there are, and as stress as well, as Daniel mentioned, you can have irregular periods very normally as a teenage girl, and this can lead to an incorrect diagnosis of PCOS and sometimes the prescription of the pill, which then ends up being not as helpful as it would want to be. As well as, being sick. If you are struggling with sickness, I remember when I was a teenager, I had, I think they call it mono over there in the States. We call it the Epstein-Barr virus. So I had that for 6 months, and I basically didn't have a period for 6 months. But it wasn't because I had PCOS. It was just because I was very sick. And I've seen similar things happen with cancer patients and people who have serious problems. So irregular periods don't always mean that you have PCOS, and equally you can have regular periods and still have PCOS if you're not ovulating. So this is why when a medical doctor is diagnosing PCOS, and only a medical doctor can do so, they're looking for the Rotterdam criteria, which are the 3 criteria for getting diagnosed with PCOS. One of them is irregular or absent periods, or anovulatory, meaning without ovulation. You're looking at clinical signs of hyperandrogenism, which means high levels of androgens, so testosterone and such. That can either be clinically seen as hirsutism, so excess facial hair loss, or seen clinically in blood tests, as well as an ultrasound done on the ovaries to see the presence of polycystic ovaries, not cysts on ovaries, but ovaries where follicles are in suspended development, trying to ovulate, but not quite getting there. So that's why we use 3 criteria to diagnose PCOS rather than just irregular periods, because that could be anything.
That's very clear. Thank you for that answer. So I saw multiple questions in the chat about the LH. So it seems like some lady got the regular period, but their LH level is very different each month. And some of them have the, they call the LH imbalance. So maybe the LH level is too low to for TTC or something like that. So maybe Daniel, you can comment a little bit about that. Is LH imbalance something similar as the irregular cycle?
Yeah, so luteinizing hormone is a hormone that spikes right before we ovulate. Now, with women with PCOS, we often see chronically high levels of LH, so we never quite get that spike. So that without that spike, we're not going to have ovulation. Now, with something like ovulatory predictor kits, those at-home test kits that measure luteinizing hormone can help predict when you're going to ovulate, those you can get false positives on, because if your LH is always high, that test is going to always detect LH in your urine. So I typically don't recommend using OPKs, those ovulatory predictor kits, until you're having somewhat consistently regular cycles, like anywhere from every 21 to even like 40 days, I'll start using the OPKs to try and determine if you're ovulating. But if your cycles are way all over the place, it's not really going to be useful to take the OPKs, because they're probably going to have false positive results.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, well, as someone who works more so with kind of women who want to lose weight, I don't have too much experience in terms of like in the LH department clinically yet. It's something that I hope to kind of like gain more experience in. But what I would say is, if you're thinking about kind of like trying to conceive, like make sure that you're having those regular periods. Look for presence of ovulation. 2 really good signs are going to be fertile cervical mucus. That's it kind of looks like raw egg white. It's stringy. You might see it on toilet paper after you wipe. That's a very, very good sign of ovulation, as well as a rise in basal body temperature. When I work with my clients who are trying to conceive, these are the 2 things that we look for, and I've helped my clients get pregnant just by using those metrics. I look forward to the day that I'm able to use more sophisticated measuring techniques.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So thank you so much for that. So while we're talking about the managing the weight, there's another myth, which is PCOS will always cause weight gain. So Anna, what do you think?
So I think this is a really interesting question, because to me, it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's different for everybody. As we said, there are loads of different causes of PCOS. PCOS also has different forms. We have lean PCOS, where people who have PCOS are maintaining a healthy weight, and that's determined by the BMI scale. And then there are the major, like over 70% of women who have insulin resistance and also will be overweight or potentially obese with PCOS. Now, I think it's really interesting because as I said, there are so many different like causes to PCOS. If you have something like a driver like insulin resistance behind you, that's going to contribute to weight gain, not directly, but it will make you want more kind of like carb laden meals, make you hungry every couple of hours, be really, really difficult for you to control your diet, because you're literally having "I'm hungry" alarm going off in your head, which makes things really difficult to concentrate on trying to lose weight in a standard calorie deficit. So if that's the case, then you really want to be making sure that you work on kind of like solving your root cause first before addressing your weight gain, and then you'll be able to lose weight much more effectively, which was my case. I tried for years using like standard eat less, move more, and it never worked. I was a national champion leader at school, running 5K a day, eating 1,200 calories that I religiously like typed into my MyFitnessPal, and I would just see my weight creep up and up and up. Now, once I started eating better for PCOS and understanding meal pairings, insulin resistance, I was able to eat so much more food, do like moderate amount of exercise, and then lose the weight, which was wonderful. And that's what I help other women do now. Equally, weight gain can cause PCOS because we have underneath our skin, we have adipose tissue, and this adipose tissue, this fat, secretes a hormone, a version of estrogen that's not as helpful as the one that we produce in our ovaries. Now, this, if you have excess adipose tissue, excess fat, you're going to have lots of estrogen being produced, and this is going to cause a hormone imbalance, which can contribute to PCOS. So it's an interesting question because you can come at it from either side, but I tend to see that once you kind of really solve the underlying cause, whatever that is for you, you'll start to see your weight balancing into what it's meant to be, rather than what PCOS would like it to be.
Thank you. Danielle?
Yeah, I definitely see, when it comes to PCOS causing weight gain, it's definitely common, especially with blood sugar imbalance. And at least in the States, it's really common for women to be told by their conventional doctors, well, just lose weight and your problems will be solved. And that's really damaging, because when it comes to weight loss with PCOS, it's not about eating less, exercising more. It really is about blood sugar balance, which usually I find is actually about eating more for my patients. So like number one thing I focus on when it comes to balancing blood sugar is going to be having a good breakfast with good protein and fat. So things like avocado toast and eggs, or a smoothie with collagen or protein powder and some avocado, so you're getting that protein and fat. So really when it comes to weight loss with PCOS, looking at how can you add foods to your plate to support your hormones, because if your hormones are out of balance, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle when it comes to weight loss. And it doesn't matter how much you restrict and how much you exercise, you won't lose weight. And the other thing, along with that is when, I get asked a lot, like, well, is this just my weight? I'm an adult now. Is this just my weight? And I need to stop trying to get back to the weight I was when I was 19, 20. And I typically say, your set point weight, like where your body is happiest at and where your weight wants to sit at, is your weight once everything else is doing well. Once your periods are regular, once you have good energy, once your labs are looking good, you're sleeping well. If you're feeling good in every aspect of your life and your labs are looking good, and the one thing is that you're like, oh, I'd really like to lose 5 more pounds, that's usually a good sign that you're at your healthy, happy weight. And so sometimes it's like, yes, weight loss can be a goal, but it's also having realistic expectations and recognizing that it's so much more about weight with PCOS. It's really about like having the energy, having the confidence, and protecting yourself from those things like the high cholesterol, the diabetes, like we talked about.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to jump on the end of that and say, when I started my health journey into kind of losing weight with PCOS and managing it and actually getting my period back, I walked into kind of a doctor's office to kind of get the lay down on what my hormones were doing at 105 kilograms, which was the heaviest I'd ever been. And I was 1 year postpartum. I walked into that clinic appointment and it was the first time I'd recorded my weight in about 5 years because of previous histories of eating disorders and such, going through teenage years with PCOS, which was highly damaging. But I remember saying to my doctor at the same time, I was like, look, I don't want to lose weight at this point. I've accepted that I'm going to be a bigger girl with PCOS. I just want to be able to take part in everyday activities. And it was interesting because when I stopped thinking about trying to lose weight and I started thinking about what can I do that's going to give me energy to better parent my toddler and to look after myself so that I'm here to watch him grow up, to get married, to have more kids, was the minute I started losing weight, because it stopped becoming like a chasing this ideal of like losing weight with PCOS, and instead became, I just want to be healthy. And it became a lot more kind of like true and like centered to my soul. And I think that's really important when you're embarking on a health journey, is find that purpose and like understand why you're doing it. You're not just doing it for weight loss, you're doing it for all those reasons as well. It's something that I talk a lot with my clients. I get them to write a list of why they're doing it. It's very helpful.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing these. Those are super helpful. So I saw a couple questions for Anna in the chat. They're asking about how do you do your meal pairing? And also another question about how did you change your diet when you mentioned about your story? Or do you think intermittent fasting will help? Just some any tricks about how to eat?
All right. So how to eat. What I focused on right at the beginning was just not focusing on diet at all and just focusing on like high energy foods and foods that were going to give me the energy to parent my son and to make me feel good. That's all I was concerned about. So I had 3 meals a day. At the time, I was working with very high insulin resistance and I was hungry every 2 hours. So the first thing I had to tackle was elongating that eating time of like eating 1 meal and 2 hours later eating another snack or a meal, to try and get that to like 3 or 4 hours. That was my first goal. The way that I was able to do that was going from a very traditional English Western diet of kind of like, a lot of Italian food and pasta and stuff like that. I still have those things, but I decided to shrink my carbohydrate portion, increase my protein, add some very, very good Greek olive oil. I am Greek, so I will say that like I am partial to like the best quality. as well as fill my plate up with fiber. I like to say at least half your plate with fresh vegetables, leafy greens, ideally multiple colors so that you're absorbing all of the different nutrients available. Once I started doing that and incorporating more healthy fats, healthy proteins to my carbohydrates, I was astonished to how quickly I was able to elongate that time between eating meals. That made things so much easier. I will say that I was still kind of hungry and craving sweets right at the beginning. I mean, I was used to eating like packets of biscuits and stuff in my when I'd have like a binge or an insulin resistant absolute craving. So I switched those out for sultanas at the beginning. And my favorite snack, which is still my favorite snack now, is a medjool date. You cut it in half, you pit it, add some peanut butter that's sugar-free, and top with some, I'm dairy-free, so I'll top it with dairy-free chocolate buttons and just like pop that in my mouth, and I feel like it tastes like a Snickers bar. It's so good. It's so sweet, but it's so high in fiber and also really high in iron, which is great because I am anemic. So that was a really, really good example of kind of like ways I was able to change my meals as well as change my snacks so that I was eating better quality foods. I also kind of like threw out a lot of like processed foods and just relied on cooking everything from scratch, using kind of like my mum's recipes as well as some of my own. I'm fortunate enough to be quite good at cooking, so that helped me a lot. But it was just about meal prepping, understanding kind of like what I wanted to eat as well as what I wanted to fuel myself with. And that was a very key mindset change for me. It was rather than kind of like, oh, what do I fancy? Or, oh, I'm really tired, I don't really feel like cooking. I would think about, what would my gut microbiome like to eat? What would my, what would I want to do to feed my ovaries? It was just a bit of it was less about convenience for me and more about seeking that optimum health. And that's what really, really helped me. Now, in terms of intermittent fasting, I don't subscribe to it because there are a lot of research coming out that talks about the effects of intermittent fasting in women. It's vastly different from the effects in men. I think with men, it can be really useful. With women, our hormones are different. And we really need to be satisfying that high cortisol spike in the morning by having a really great balanced breakfast. Now, saying that, I do think there is a great protocol to be used. And this would be trying to avoid eating too late into the night. And this is because it can really mess up insulin resistance. So I like to apply the 3-2-1 rule to most of my clients. No food 3 hours before bed, no work 2 hours before bed, and no screens 1 hour before bed. That will help you sleep. It will reduce your insulin resistance and it'll make you feel a lot better.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, our second last myth. There's no treatment for PCOS. Danielle, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, in the sense that there's no one magic pill that you can take and then poof, all your symptoms are gone. That is true, but there is so much that you can do through diet and lifestyle changes, through stress management and optimizing sleep and moving your body to fully manage your PCOS symptoms. And it's important that when you approach healing PCOS, you take it step by step and really allow yourself the time to build these sustainable habits, because it's not about doing a crash diet or an extreme exercise plan for 2 months and then you're in the clear. It's really about learning to live in a way that's going to allow you to manage your PCOS long term, because you can be doing all the right things for 5 years, and then if you go back to your old ways, maybe not eating right for your blood sugar, really stressed, over exercising, then those symptoms can come back. So I would say this is obviously a myth, but it's not, it's something you want to be working towards kind of long term. And that's why, when I work with my patients, we're not overhauling their diet in one day. We pick 1 or 2 things to focus on for a few weeks. Once they come back and they're like, all right, I've got my breakfast dialed in, I'm feeling really good about this, we move on to the next step.
Yeah, and that's very similar to what I do with my clients as well. As I mentioned, I have a 6-step protocol based in my experience with seeing clients as well as research that I've read up on. And yes, there are plenty of things that you can do for PCOS. I wouldn't say there's a cure unless it is your PCOS is derived from maybe post-pill PCOS syndrome. Or I've seen clients, I've heard of clients who have had breast they've got breast implants that have then caused PCOS, and then they've taken those breast implants out and then they don't have PCOS anymore. So that's a really interesting thing that can happen. Not all PCOS is kind of like going to be with you for life. If that is the case, majority of people, it is something that you will need to manage for the rest of your life. But once you have it managed, it becomes it's like absolutely second nature. It's not something that I have to think about so much anymore, because because I have mainly insulin resistance, that's what I tend to kind of like focus on for me. So that's just meal pairing. That's making sure that I'm getting my daily seeds in, my fiber, making sure that I'm being kind to my body and not like pushing myself too much. It's going to change. And, you know, life hands you lemons all the time. And like, you know, I've been on a journey with my PCOS since I was 17 and I'm now 25. I would say I've only started to make headway in the last year and a half. But now I'm pregnant and I have to put all of kind of like my weight loss journey on hold to kind of really look after my baby and to kind of give me the nutrients that I need. So your journey with kind of treating your PCOS is going to stop and start. There's going to be hurdles. There's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be times where you're going to be able to hit it absolutely on nail on the head and go full throttle. And there's going to be times when you need to pull back and enjoy life. I will also say Christmas comes around the corner, and I am not skipping out on a lovely Christmas dinner. It's my favorite time of the year. So I'm very happy to gain a little bit of weight back and maybe see my period go a little bit awry over like kind of December and January, because it's meaning that I'm enjoying my time with my family and having that like aspect of kind of like social interaction, and like that's really important. I saw someone talk about orthorexia in the chat, and I just thought I'd want to kind of like answer that quite quickly. I think a lot of people can look at people who have managed PCOS and think, oh, they are always eating this amazingly healthy way and they never stray from it. It's completely not true. You know, I still indulge in KFC every now and then. I just know that I'm going to have it maybe with a side salad, just to make sure that I'm getting enough nutrients in and I'm balancing it correctly with not having too many carbs and just focusing on some good stuff as well. So I believe in a very great thing called add, don't restrict. Now, restricting is what really did a number on me growing up as a teenager with PCOS. When you're thinking about adding, you're thinking about adding healthy fats, adding healthy protein, adding fiber to a meal or a snack or a craving. You know, if you're craving a milkshake or something, you can have some nuts on the side or some blueberries in it or something like that. Anything just to make it a little bit more PCOS friendly. So yeah, PCOS is a syndrome that needs to be managed for the most part of people throughout their life, but it becomes second nature, and it's not that hard.
Great, that's really helpful. So Anna mentioned about the lifetime PCOS. So here leads to this: PCOS can go away naturally with time. Danielle, do you agree with that?
We'll kind of piggyback on my last answer of, it's not, well, first going away naturally over time, if that means just going away without any effort or consideration of like your driving cause of PCOS, I would say, no, it cannot. There has to be some effort there to improve symptoms. Post-pill PCOS might be the one exception if you were to wait long enough, like years after, symptoms might resolve. I saw a few questions asking in the question box about post-pill PCOS, and essentially that is when PCOS symptoms start after coming off the pill. So typically women with PCOS can think back to their teen years, and maybe you didn't know it was PCOS back then, but you had really irregular cycles for years as a teenager. You had really bad acne, you had hair loss, fatigue, weight gain, you had those symptoms of PCOS. Maybe you were put on the pill to help treat some of those things. If you were in that category where you had symptoms before being put on the pill, then you would not fall into the post-pill PCOS category. This is specifically for women who maybe had regular periods as a teenager, went on a birth control pill purely for contraceptive reasons, and then came off the pill and suddenly had all these PCOS symptoms that they didn't have beforehand. So with that, over time, that may improve and kind of resolve on its own. But really, it's about, again, that lifestyle piece. And unfortunately, like, we live in a really high stress world. We've got social media in our hand all day, every day. We're exposed to toxins. We have access to processed foods everywhere we go. And all of those factors have contributed to PCOS being more prevalent in our generation versus our great-great-great-grandparents, where we didn't really see PCOS. So I would say no, it cannot naturally go away with time.
Anna, what do you think?
Yeah, I would also agree. For the majority of people, PCOS is something that's going to be a lifelong condition. Long after menopause happens and you're no longer ovulating, you can still have problems with the metabolic side, so insulin resistance and such, as well as the raised increases from not managing PCOS correctly when you had the chance prior to perimenopause and menopause. The increase in risk of diabetes, heart disease, endometrial cancer, there's plenty of risks for people if you don't want to manage your PCOS. So I always encourage you to manage it sooner rather than later, just to stave off those risks and live a long, happy and healthy life. So I very much say that it's a lifelong thing, but that's not a bad thing. Most people have something they've got to live with for their entire life. So as I feel quite fortunate to know a lot about PCOS now, and that's what I help other people understand, so that they are better equipped to understand their condition, to understand what helps them. And there are now, thankfully, a lot more experts coming out with people and a lot more research coming out, which gives us more indication of ways we can help each other that didn't exist when I first got diagnosed with PCOS and didn't exist when it was first kind of mentioned in the medical books.
Thank you so much, guys. So with that, I like to talk a little bit about how Mirror could help. As some of you are already Mirror users, so this might sound familiar to you. But again, same thing, if you have any questions, you can type into the chat. So Mirror is the palm-sized lab in your home for your hormone test. So Mirror provides you numerical values. So that means when you test, it doesn't give you positive, negative, but give you actual hormone concentration in the number, just like what you're doing the blood test in the lab. And also Mirror has lab accuracy, and all your data are learned by an algorithm at Mirror. So all these suggestions are personalized to you by our AI. And also we measure multiple hormones. It's not the OPK. So we measure LH, estrogen, progesterone, and the FSH right now. So we'll talk a little bit more about the product later, but it's pretty comprehensive for you to understand your fertility health. And most importantly, this is irregular cycle and PCOS friendly. So we have done a lot of clinical studies. So this just shows some very high level example. So you can see estrogen test on the left and LH on the right. So those shows mirror test versus lab test, and you can see that correlation is very high. So our results are quite equivalent to your lab test. And how can Mirror help me if I have PCOS? So we have done a lot of study on this, and we found that people with PCOS who use Mirror to TTC, the pregnancy rate is about 2 times higher than using OPK. And the reason being that the Mirror gives you actual hormone concentration, and also Mirror gives you higher dynamic range, which we'll talk a little bit in the next few slides. But the data already show the Mirror is more advanced tool. If you have irregular cycle, your hormone can fluctuate, and this is the one you need, because you need to have more deeper look, more precise look into your hormone profile. You may have irregularities, hormone may change, so Mirror can help you with that. So why is Mirror good for PCOS monitoring? The first one is because our dynamic range is really high. So what does dynamic range mean? So that means the range we can measure. If you have hormone irregularity, that means, just put in really simple way, your hormone can go very high, can go very low, and the Mirror is able to detect a very low hormone level and a very high hormone level. So this range is much broader than traditional OPK or other semi-quantitative technology. Okay, so this will tell you, basically, it will give you very clear understanding. You will not go out of range if you have PCOS on your testing. And also Mirror can learn your hormone pattern, and it can have 100% personalized results. As someone with PCOS, you don't want to follow population average, because theirs is more like a standard curve, and yours is not going to be any similar as the standard curve. So that's quite important. And also Mirror shows the whole pattern. Mirror gives you actual numbers. This is so important, because if you're just positive, negative, with a lot of people with PCOS, you probably already know your hormone baseline, LH baseline, is very high. So even you're at your baseline, the OPK can tell you it's already a positive answer. When you're actually ovulating, just getting higher, it also still shows positive. So you don't really know when the ovulation happens. But with Mirror, you're going to see the curve, your actual curve. So this will not be an issue. So Mirror also monitor multiple hormones. So as I'm really a believer that our body works as a whole thing. If you just test the LH, yeah, it probably could tell you ovulation in the cycle. Maybe that's not accurate, but it will really not try, help you to understand what is the root cause, as we mentioned multiple times in this panel. So our body, all these LH, estrogen, FSH, PDG, all these hormones work as a whole thing. So you want to understand how your pattern is going on and what's the ratio between them and how this cycle compare to last cycle. And to do that, you need some, more numerical precise device to measure, and that also can, analyze and track all the data for you for long term. And the here just some hormone concentrate hormone curve and about what Mirror is measuring. The LH hormone is this blue line, and it will go up right before your ovulation. So LH can tell you your peak ovulation days, peak fertile days. Usually it's about 2 days. And your estrogen will go up few days before ovulation, so that will tell you your fertile window. And the PDG will go up the yellow line will after ovulation. So if you have PCOS, your body might be trying to ovulate multiple times in the cycle. It may or may not be successful. However, with PDG rise, you can confirm ovulation has happened. So PDG is quite useful if you have PCOS. And the last one is FSH. So FSH can help you to, number one, track your ovulation. Say it has a peak in the middle while you're ovulating, and also can help you to understand your fertility level. If you're getting a little bit, older, like 35 years old or above, you want to understand, do I have enough time? How is my fertility level? How is my ovarian reserve? So that's what FSH is doing. So same as what we said before, it's a whole story. Everything are linked together. Okay. So, and then with PCOS, and we have done a lot of research with our users, and we found that there's multiple different hormone pattern curve. So not everyone's the same. Not saying your PCOS, your hormones look same as the other people who have PCOS. There's a gradual onset, and there's a rapid onset, and this means like some people can have a very obvious peak, just like the bottom curve here. So that peak is really high. That's a high LH peak, and the ovulation happens over there. And some people have gradual onset. Maybe they have multiple very small surge. You don't know if they're true surge or not. Their LH just trying to get higher. Sometimes even their baseline, LH baseline without the surge is getting higher too. So it's pretty hard to understand if the ovulation attempt was successful or not. So that's the time you will want to use the Mirror confirm one, which is the PDG, to confirm, okay, ovulation has happened or didn't happen. And we recently just launched a new product, which is a Mirror Max wand. So this wand put all the LH, estrogen, and the PDG in one wand. So you only need to sample your urine once. You do that once, and you got all three numbers all together. So this is a new product. It's testing so many hormones. I haven't seen any product within one test that can test more hormones than this for women's health so far. So it's really an exciting one, and it has really great review. And also, we're running a promotion for that. So don't forget about this. You can get the 20% off Max Starter Kit. We use a code MAX20 or 15% off Max Wands. If you already have an analyzer, this will work perfectly with your existing analyzer. So the code for the wand is MAX15. And also another new product we recently launched is a Mirror Ovum wand, and this is to test the FSH. So as we said earlier, this is to understand your fertility level, ovarian reserve. That's a pretty important factor that can affect the cycle irregularity. So if you have irregular cycle, you want to understand why. And you want to test what is really affecting this, what is my reason, and this is one of the hormone doctors testing for that. And also FSH can increase your accuracy on ovulation prediction as well. Again, if you have irregular cycle, it's a little bit difficult to catch that timing. Now you have LH, estrogen, PDG, and FSH, whole 4 hormones testing together, so you won't miss that surge. Okay, so now this product is still on pre-order, and you can go to our website and get 10% off. There's a final chance because we'll start to ship that very soon. And we have many stories about PCOS and TTC journey in general. Many of them are pretty touching. I heard so many good stories, how we can help people. So you can read our success stories on our website. And also we have a Facebook group, and this is for people who are not mirror user and also who are mirror user. You can talk about your problem in general, just like how you guys are talking in the chat today. People support each other. Also, mirror users share their test results and to say if other people have similar results or what those mean. So it's pretty casual discussion. Okay, great. We don't have too much time left for this Q&A session. So maybe let me see, maybe we can take probably just one question, one or two. I think probably one. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, I saw some mirror questions. I will probably not answer them. So for mirror question, if you have, you can go to support@miracare.com. They answer every single question you send over there. Okay, so maybe this one might be a good one. So some people are doing, so Anna and Daniel, some people are probably on birth control, and then they say something about the post-PO PCOS syndrome. Maybe they stop birth control and they have an issue. So can this be cured, or do you guys see this often? How do you address that? Maybe Danielle want to go first.
Yeah, so with post-pill PCOS, I typically think of a few things. The first is supporting the liver, because the liver has to work a lot to break down the pill, and the liver is also where we break down hormones. So if we're taking the pill, which typically has estrogen in it for 10 plus years, typically we can see hormone imbalance related to that pill. So we want to support the liver so that's able to break down the hormones that we've been taking from the pill kind of synthetically. So one is to support the liver. The second is to support the gut, because we know that taking the pill, especially for years and years, can disrupt our microbiome. And the third is going to be to look at nutrient deficiencies, because we know the pill can deplete the body of certain nutrients, which are going to be important for getting pregnant. So those are kind of like the three fundamental things I focus on when women are coming off the pill. And I know for a lot of women, coming off the pill can be kind of scary, especially if you were put on the pill for really irregular periods or acne. It's usually the most common concern I hear from patients is, I'm afraid to come off the pill because I don't want my skin to flare up. So I'll do some of that basic support around liver, gut health, and nutrients for 2 months before we get them off the pill. And they typically have a much easier time transitioning off without having that rebound acne.
Great. Anna, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so just like Danielle said, really kind of focusing on liver function is super important, as well as colon function. Yes, the liver breaks down the synthetic hormones as well as our body hormones, but the way that they exit is through feces. So we want to make sure that you're having regular bowel movements, that you're not getting stuck up with constipation, which can be a big contributor to hormones reactivating and then circling around the system. So we want to make sure that those body systems are working nice and efficiently to kind of get those synthetic hormones and already used natural body hormones out of the system to make way for the good ones to come in. As well as kind of focusing on that gut health, you also want to be focusing on your vaginal health as well. The gut microbiome and the vaginal microbiome are very intertwined, and that's why people who are on the pill can also suffer with recurrent thrush, BV, and other vaginal infections. It's all very much, it's also very similar. So we want to be making sure that that's all kind of taken care of as well. Danielle said that she uses kind of 2 months of kind of being on a plan before sort of taking clients off a contraceptive pill or a hormonal contraception. I tend to recommend 3 months. I think it gives people adequate time to kind of go through the changes in lifestyle and diet, specifically diet. I like to break my changes in diet down over the course of a month. We literally tackle each meal each week. So week 1 is breakfast, week 2 is lunch, and so forth, so on and so forth. So giving people adequate time to kind of get their head around how to do things with PCOS in mind is going to be super important before you could then take the contraceptive pill away and have that huge roller coaster of emotions. Danielle mentioned acne, but you're also going to see kind of brain fog, maybe massive changes in libido, and just a whole can of worms that are being opened. Obviously, that's not true for everybody. Some people can come off and just be miraculously wonderful, and some people will have a harder time than others. you're never going to know how coming off the pill is going to affect you. And that's where I say, if you're thinking of trying to conceive, you want to come off the pill maybe a year before you ideally want looking to conceive, just because it might take you a year to regain a period. I've seen clients come off the pill and it takes 6 months to a year for it to come off. And actually, when you're diagnosing, if you've never been diagnosed with PCOS before and you took the pill purely for contraceptive reasons, going by NICE guidelines, which are the guidelines that govern GPs in the UK, you can only be diagnosed with PCOS if you haven't had a period 6 months after stopping contraception, if you had no symptoms before, and a year of no period if you had any sort of inkling of PCOS before. That doesn't mean you need to be diagnosed with PCOS, but they would look at your history and say, well, she had insulin resistance, well, she had like problems with her blood sugar, she may have had problems with her not having a regular cycle. So that's where I would say you definitely want to be coming off the pill well before you're thinking about conceiving, because you want to make sure that any problems, if you were to have them, and I'm not saying that everyone does, get ironed out and you're feeling in tip-top shape, and making sure that you're having those regular ovulatory periods, building up that endometrium and endometrial lining to kind of really sustain a healthy pregnancy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna. So we're out of time. I just want to do a final reminder, as we already talked about Max 1 promotion. So this is the time to write down the code. It's showing on the screen, Max 20 and Max 15. All right, thank you so much. So I will do a final poll on the screen. I really appreciate if you can, just answer those. There's only 2 questions time to let us know how we did, or if you want to hear, similar format in the future. And meanwhile, I will also post the handout to the for the slides today. So you will, if you want to see that, you have a copy. And while I'm doing this, I want to give an opportunity to Danielle and Anna to say some final words about where to find you. For example, there's already people asking in the chat, then, where to follow you, where to find you. So go ahead.
Yeah.
And I want
to... sorry, Danielle, you go first. Mm-hmm. I was going to say that you can find me pretty much everywhere online by Anna the PCOS Coach. I'm primarily hanging out on Instagram and TikTok. I will be starting a YouTube very soon, but with my pregnancy, things are taking a little bit longer than planned. I did also want to mention that someone said that they were disappointed because they thought that PCOS was being represented in a bit of a negative light. What I will say is that if you missed what I said earlier on, I am a sister myself. I have PCOS. I have it managed. The difference between managed PCOS and unmanaged PCOS is night and day. Yes, PCOS unmanaged can be a very difficult thing to live with, and I'm not going to pretend that it wasn't, because it got dark for me some days. But now that I have it managed, now that I have that knowledge, now that I know just like the back of my hand what to do to like make myself feel better, and I've given myself a lot of kind of breaks with the way that I feel. And kind of corrected a lot of sort of like teenage trauma that's been brought on from kind of like media and such, with the way that a woman should look. I feel so much better, and it's not something that holds me back anymore. So like, it is very much like, once you get it managed and once you get things under control, you're going to feel great. It's not going to be something you're going to think about that much anymore. So there is hope.
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Danielle, so Dr. Danielle .ND, like naturopathic doctor. And I also have a podcast called Heal Your Hormones with Dr. Danielle, where I share more information about PCOS, PMS, fertility, kind of all of it. And then my website and all of that is linked on my social media.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. So I know there's some question about Mira we didn't have time to answer today. So you can always email support@miracare.com, or you can just go to our website, which is miracare.com. So sign up on the email newsletter. You will hear other free webinar, and there's many other free resource knowledge courses like this in the future. You will get notification in your email. So, if you haven't signed up, and give a try, and don't forget to utilize your promo code. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.